Hey science fans, so today's video is going to be about diffusion and it links with Mr. Deaton's video that comes from week 2, lesson 2. So this is AQA biology, everyone needs to know it. So diffusion, very, very important process. It's the reason we get oxygen into our blood. It's the reason we get carbon dioxide out of our blood. It's the reason why we get nutrients into our blood from our intestines. It's very, very, very important. It's how plants, I'm pointing out the window, you can't see that, plants obtain gases to do photosynthesis. So diffusion is the movement of particles from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration along a concentration gradient. Okay, so it's rather gross, but I'm in my room, it's empty because you're all at home. If I was to do a fart here, very high proportion of, let's say methane, just to be polite, methane particles around me. This would be an area of high concentration. The rest of the room would be an area of low concentration. Over time, those particles are going to diffuse until they reach equilibrium. They're going to move along the concentration gradient. We know this about heat as well. Heat, or the kinetic energy in heat moves from an area of hot to cold, high concentration to low concentration until it reaches an equilibrium. That's what diffusion is. So I've got a practical, well, I've got two practicals to show you about that. Examiners are a little bit well known for doing something called an AO2 question. Now, an AO2 question is where they take some knowledge that you know and they apply it to a situation that you don't. And they're trying to see if your scientific reasoning can come up with an answer. This is an example of one of those practicals. Here's the practical. Okay, so I've got something in here called viscine tubing. It's kind of like this plasticky tubing. It's kind of like trying to knock the bottom of a balloon. Ta-da! Plasticky tubing. Now, very small particles like water can move in and out of this. Larger particles can't. So what I'm going to put in here is a large particle that cannot move through this membrane, called starch. So if you can't remember what starch is, I'm very aware that on the YouTube channel there are some Year 8 lessons on starch. Starch is a long chain carbohydrate made of glucose. And glucose, as we know, is used in respiration to release energy. Don't really know why I'm on the floor. Okay, what I'm going to do with this viscine tubing to show diffusion across a surface is try and get it open, which in itself, I'm hoping I can find some technology that'll speed this bad boy up a little bit. There we go, we got it open. So I'm going to pop in some starch solution. So starch, large, insoluble molecules, so your body has to work quite hard to digest it. Now, if you remember the food test and everything from Year 8, we can use an indicator to test a food for starch, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. You can see that sort of started filling up there. Starch is broken down in your mouth by amylase, which is an enzyme specific for starch, and you produce it in your saliva. So a fun bit of related thing to do at home since you've got a lot of time on your hands. Have a bread eating competition. Try chew a piece of bread for as long as you can without swallowing. It will begin to taste really sweet as that starch is broken down into sugar. That sugar is diffused into your cells, directly used for respiration. Respiration, chemical reaction happening in every one of your cells to release energy. It doesn't produce energy, it releases energy. This is my viscine tubing. It's full of starch solution. The starch solution cannot get out, it is too large. Now I can test for starch using iodine. Okay, you'll learn that from your food test. This is a good link. I'm going to pop this in the water. Now the water can move into this because it's small enough to diffuse across. High concentration of water here, low concentration of water here. So the diffusion gradient is going to go from the water into the viscine tubing. So I'm just going to pop this in here. Now there is no starch in this water. All of the starch is in the viscine tubing unless I spilled some. Okay, but I can indicate the movement of water from high concentration outside to low concentration inside. So there you go, this is my idea. I'm just going to put this white box behind it so you can really see. Now the water is going to start to diffuse through that membrane because the concentration of water the concentration of water in the Viscine tubing is really low. You can already see some black forming on that Viscine tubing. So the iodine is moving into, small iodine particles are moving into the Viscine tubing and are going to indicate that the starch is in there and that starch can't get out. I have actually spilled a tiny bit of starch in there because I can see it. I'm just going to give that a bit of a mix. Yeah, you can see that it's moving into that tube. I'm going to put this on hyperlapse so we can see the end result. Would you look at that? So the iodine is small enough to get in through that membrane and diffuse across that membrane from a high concentration outside the membrane to a low concentration inside the membrane where the starch is, and it's gone black. Wonderful.